Teachings of Monsignor Francis Fayez, produced by The Lord's Banquet.
How can someone confess Christ correctly and still stand in his way? How can the man who has just heard, "You are rock," soon hear, "You are an obstacle to me"? Did Christ's promise change, or did the disciple need to return behind the Lord? These are profound questions, and answering them touches the very core of what it actually means to follow Jesus.
Section 1. Confession and the Cross. From Caesarea Philippi to the Paschal Mystery. To really grasp this, we need to go back to that incredible moment at Caesarea Philippi. There, Peter boldly confesses, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus responds by calling him the rock, handing him the keys, and speaking of the church he will build. In that exact moment, Peter knows exactly who Jesus is. But here's the catch. He doesn't yet understand how Jesus will be the Messiah. Right after this powerful confession, Jesus begins to reveal that he must go to Jerusalem to suffer, die, and rise again. This is the Paschal Mystery. The cross and the resurrection aren't two separate events. They are one inseparable, singular saving plan. And when Jesus says he must go, it's not some tragic, blind fate or a love of pain. It is a divine necessity. It's rooted entirely in his absolute fidelity to God's saving plan and his boundless love for us. Section 2. The Place of Discipleship, when human love becomes an obstacle. Upon hearing of this coming suffering, Peter actually takes Jesus aside and begins to rebuke him. Now, we shouldn't villainize Peter here. He objects out of genuine human fear and protective love for his master. But this illustrates a truly dangerous turning point. It's the exact moment a disciple starts trying to direct the master. Jesus responds with words that sound incredibly sharp. "Get behind me, Satan." But let's look closely at the spatial dynamics of this scene. Jesus is walking ahead, and he's instructing Peter to literally return behind him. You see, behind is the proper place of discipleship. This isn't an expulsion or a cancellation of Christ's love. And calling him Satan, that identifies the logic that is resisting God's way, the temptation of glory without the cross, of power without obedience. It does not define Peter's ultimate identity.
The crucial point here is the contrast between the rock and the stumbling block. Christ's correction doesn't revoke his earlier promise to Peter. When Peter stands behind Christ, listening and following, he is the rock, a foundational servant. But the very moment he steps in front of Christ to dictate the path, he becomes a stumbling block. The correction simply restores the disciple to his proper spatial and spiritual alignment.
Section 3. A renewed mind. The liturgical unity of the Word. So how do we ensure we stay behind the Lord? Well, it requires a completely renewed mind. The Church beautifully illustrates this through its liturgical readings, which function not as isolated texts, but as a single, ascending spiritual movement. They prepare the believer's mind for true discipleship.
When we unite these scriptures, a profound pathway opens up. In Jeremiah, we see the Word of God as a burning fire within, revealing the true cost of fidelity. The psalmist cries out with a deep thirst for God, a thirst that reorders all our other human desires. In Romans, Paul gives us the remedy. We must present our bodies as a living sacrifice and be transformed by the renewal of our minds. And finally, the gospel calls us to return behind Christ and take up our cross. Our minds absolutely must be renewed to discern God's will, rejecting the world's logic that constantly demands glory without sacrifice.
Section 4. The True Christian Cross, what the cross is and is not. This brings us directly to the reality of the true Christian cross. We have to clearly define what carrying the cross actually means, and just as importantly, we need to separate it from some very toxic misunderstandings. We must be pastorally clear on this. The cross never glorifies pain in and of itself. It absolutely never justifies suffering through abuse, accepting injustice, or refusing medical treatment and protection. Not every pain we experience is a cross. Faith never, ever demands blind submission to harm. God does not desire our destruction.
So what does Jesus actually mean when he says, "Take up your cross and follow me"? He's redefining cross-bearing as steadfast fidelity to truth and love. It is the cost we bear for remaining faithful to the gospel, and it is always oriented toward the ultimate hope of the resurrection. The cross is an act of following. It's a union with Christ's own love. It leads right to that piercing question Jesus asks. What profit is there if a man gains the whole world but loses his soul? Think about that. What profit is there if success, safety, or worldly victory is purchased by sacrificing your conscience, compromising the truth, or losing your true identity before God? A success that costs you your soul is, in the end, the ultimate failure.
Section 5. Symbols of the Faith, Visualizing the Confession. The early Christians understood this deeply, and they built it right into the visual language of the early church. These ancient symbols beautifully, silently declare the very confession Peter made, etching it into stone to anchor their hope. One of the most profound is the word ichthys, pronounced ichthys. In Greek, it simply means fish, but early believers used its letters as an acronym for Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. This silent visual connects directly back to Peter's verbal confession at Caesarea Philippi. It's a complete summary of exactly who Jesus is. Picture an ancient Christian fish drawn on first-century plaster. If you reduce that image down to its essential lines, you reveal an X or chi right at the center, the first letter of Christ. From that central crossing, the lines extend and it develops beautifully into the cross itself. This shows us that the ancient symbol of the fish inherently contains the theology of the cross. You cannot have the Savior without the sacrifice.
Other symbols, like the anchor and the vine, speak a similar silent theology. The anchor stands for hope through the crossing of life's turbulent waters, a hope anchored in the resurrection. The vine represents our need to abide in Christ, because a branch cannot bear fruit on its own. These symbols clarify our confession of faith, but we have to remember, they never replace the lived gospel. They are calls to action.
Section 6. Returning behind the Lord. Pastoral application for today. So, how do we live this out today? Let's look at the practical, pastoral applications of this theology. How do we ensure we are returning behind the Lord in our own daily lives?
First, looking at the church itself, ministry must always remain under the Word. Christ truly gives Peter a role, a massive responsibility, but Peter truly remains a disciple. Church authority is always in service to the gospel. It is never above the Word of God, and those in authority must remain perpetually open to the Lord's correction.
And this applies to all of us. As a believer, ask yourself, do I accept Christ as He reveals Himself, or just the parts I prefer? In your family, does your protective love accidentally become a means to control someone else's divine calling? If you are a minister or pastor, do you lead people behind Christ or merely behind your own image? For the sufferer, we must never say too quickly, "This is your cross." We have to begin with listening, seeking treatment, offering protection, and fighting for justice. And as a community, we must let our verbal confession transform into tangible justice and service. Reflect for a moment. Where might you be standing in front of Christ right now?
This brings us to a truth we must hold with deep pastoral warmth. Mature faith does not make Christ walk behind my plan, it brings me back behind Him.
This isn't a message of defeat, it's actually one of profound hope. Correction purifies our vocation. The rock remains rock when it stays behind the Lord. The cross is never the final word, because true discipleship inevitably opens toward the resurrection.
Let us close with this prayer. Lord Jesus, renew my mind, reorder my desires, and bring me back behind you on the way of love, truth, and resurrection.
Do I want Christ as He is, or a Christ made to fit me?